There comes a time in every person's life when noise becomes unbearable. Not the noise outside, but the constant mental chatter, judgments, distractions, and expectations. In a world that glorifies oversharing and constant validation, very few understand the power of silence and self-focus. This story isn't just about going quiet. It's about going inward. It's about what happens when you stop seeking approval, let go of reacting to every slight, and start truly building yourself, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. When you learn to focus on your own growth while maintaining silence, you enter a state where things start to align, not magically, but because you're finally aligned with your true self. This is the journey of a man named Elijah, a talented but broken soul, who learned that by turning inward and embracing silence, the world outside began to transform on its own. Silence isn't empty, it's full of answers. 1.1. Elijah's Chaotic World. Elijah Rivera was a 34-year-old man living in Los Angeles. On the surface, he had everything: a mid-level corporate job in a finance firm, a stylish apartment in the heart of the city, a group of friends who kept weekends exciting, and a smartphone filled with apps and distractions. But under the shell of this normal life was a man who was completely lost. His mornings started with anxiety, alarm blaring, emails piling, social media buzzing. He scrolled through Instagram before brushing his teeth, comparing his life to others in milliseconds. His thoughts were loud, racing, urgent. His life felt like a sprint on a treadmill with no pause button. He often wondered, why does it feel like I'm doing everything but nothing is working? 1.2. The Breaking Point. It was a Tuesday morning when things truly cracked. Elijah had worked late the previous night, trying to complete a quarterly report, only to have his manager dismiss it with a wave and a sarcastic jab. Again, half-baked. That night, he drank more than he should have and vented in a group chat. But no one really listened. That morning, while stuck in LA traffic, a podcast played through his car speakers. When you focus on yourself and stay silent, life begins to align. Most people don't realize they're stuck reacting, not building. Those words hit him hard. He pulled over on the shoulder. He stared into the morning sun, the noise of passing cars fading into a blur. Something inside him whispered, "You've been so busy shouting at life, you've forgotten to listen." That evening, Elijah deactivated his social media accounts, not out of rebellion, but out of fatigue. He didn't announce it. He didn't warn anyone. For the first time, he chose silence. 1.3. The Isolation Phase. The following week was the hardest. No pings, no likes, no texts asking, "Are you okay?" Silence, true silence, fell over him like a cold sheet. His mind, untrained to sit in stillness, panicked. He began journaling each day, writing what he felt without filters: anger, regret, guilt, pain. His past surfaced: the failed relationships, the resentment towards his father, the betrayal by close friends. All the emotions he had numbed with constant stimulation now roared to the surface. But instead of running from them, he allowed them. He sat in silence every evening, breathing deeply, letting the emotions rise and fall like ocean tides. One evening, he wrote in his journal, "I always feared being alone, but now I realize I feared facing myself. Silence is not the enemy. It is my greatest teacher." 1.4. Lessons from Solitude. After 14 days, something shifted. He began waking up without panic. He noticed the sound of birds on his balcony, something he hadn't paid attention to in years. He sipped coffee without scrolling. His mornings were no longer chaotic. They were intentional. He read books, real books, books on self-awareness, Buddhist teachings, Stoic philosophy. One quote by Marcus Aurelius stuck with him: "The tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think, or do, only what you do." He started to embrace this philosophy. Instead of seeking to be understood, he sought to understand himself. Instead of responding to every challenge with noise, he responded with action, or better yet, with stillness. He started going to the gym consistently, not to post progress pics but to strengthen his discipline. He picked up cooking again, a hobby he once loved. He cleaned his apartment, meditated, started writing music, not for fame, but for healing. Each act of self-care became a quiet rebellion against the noise that once ruled him. 1.5. The Silent Transformation. By the end of the first month, Elijah was unrecognizable to himself. He noticed how people started reacting differently. His co-workers, once dismissive, began respecting his calm demeanor. He didn't argue in meetings. He simply listened, spoke with clarity, and let his work speak. At a party he reluctantly attended, someone said, "Man, you've changed. You used to talk so much, now you're composed, mysterious even." Elijah smiled. He didn't need to explain, because he knew now. Silence wasn't weakness, it was mastery. 1:6, closing, chapter 1. In a world screaming for attention, Elijah found his strength in quiet resolve. His journey of self-focus had just begun, but already the benefits were undeniable. He didn't need to control the world, he only needed to control himself. And when that shift happened, life began rearranging itself around his energy. 2.1. Silence isn't enough. After 30 days of solitude and self-focus, Elijah felt a remarkable shift in his energy. For the first time in years, he wasn't merely surviving, he was awakening. But a new challenge emerged. The world hadn't changed just because he had. The noise outside still existed. Friends who didn't understand his silence. Colleagues who continued their politics. Family members who still tried to control his life with guilt and expectations. Elijah realized that even though he had built silence within, the true test was in how he would carry that silence into a noisy world. His next evolution wouldn't just come from being quiet, but from letting go, from detaching emotionally from things he couldn't control. 2.2. Emotional triggers. It started with a phone call from his mother. "Elijah, you never call anymore. What's wrong with you? You think you're better than us now?" The old Elijah would have reacted, defending, arguing, apologizing. But the new Elijah sat silently, holding the phone to his ear like it was a lesson. He calmly replied, "I love you, Mom, but I'm taking time to understand myself. I'll call when I'm ready, not out of guilt." Click. She hung up. For hours, guilt swirled inside him. What if she thinks I don't care? What if I'm being selfish? But that night, he remembered a quote he had read in a Zen book. Attachment is the root of suffering. We suffer not because of what others do, but because of our expectation that they should do differently. That line burned into his mind. Detachment isn't about not loving. It's about not clinging. He could love his mother without being pulled into her emotional chaos. 2.3. Friends who fade. His next test came during a group chat with old college friends. After weeks of silence, he typed in, "Hope you all are doing well. Been taking time for myself. Might not be around much for a while." One response, "LMAO, Elijah found Buddhism or some Aishat." Another, "Bro acting brand new. You okay?" Only one friend, Darren, sent a private message, "Proud of you, man. I've been thinking of doing the same." That night, Elijah scrolled through the chat history. Years of shared nonsense, trash talk, fake laughter. It was clear, these weren't friendships, they were distractions. He archived the group chat. No drama, no exit speech, just a silent goodbye. He felt grief, but he also felt free. 2.4. The Stillwater Test. Weeks passed, Elijah's silence deepened. He meditated each morning, sometimes just watching his thoughts like clouds in the sky. Some days were heavy, others felt divine. One evening, he visited a small Buddhist temple he had found online. There, a monk named Jin spoke to a small group. "Imagine your mind as a glass of muddy water. The more you stir, the more it clouds. But if you let it sit still, clarity returns." Elijah closed his eyes. "That's exactly what I've been doing. letting the mud settle. But Jin added something more powerful. Even when the water clears, someone will try to stir it again. A comment, a breakup, a failure. You must become still enough inside that no outside hand can muddy your peace. That became Elijah's new goal. Unshakable inner stillness. 2.5. Breaking the pattern. One Sunday, he ran into an ex-girlfriend, Marissa, at a bookstore. She looked surprised. "Elijah? Wow, long time. You look different." He smiled. "Yeah, been working on myself." "You still at Morgan Fields?" "No, left last month, starting my own consulting gig." There was a moment of pause. She leaned in, curious. "You know, I always thought you had potential. You were just all over the place." In the past, those words would have stung. He would have tried to prove himself, impress her, show her he had changed. But this time, he simply nodded. "Thanks. Hope you're doing well." And he walked away. Not out of pride, but out of peace. 2.6. Discipline as detachment. Elijah soon realized that emotional detachment required discipline, a constant return to silence. He set new boundaries. No phone after 8 p.m., no news before 10 a.m., weekly digital detox, no responding to texts that disturbed his peace. He began tracking his triggers in a journal. Monday, felt anxious when John criticized my idea. Told myself his opinion doesn't define my worth. Let it pass. Thursday, saw old pictures, missed old times, but reminded myself, I'm not that version anymore. These weren't just habits. They were spiritual practices. By observing instead of reacting, Elijah developed emotional sovereignty. He became the observer of his life, not its prisoner. 2.7. From external validation to internal alignment. One afternoon, he walked past a mirror and actually paused. For the first time, he didn't see a man pretending to be confident. He saw a man becoming whole. He remembered how he used to live, performing for others, craving attention, needing praise. Now, he needed nothing but alignment between his thoughts, words, and actions. When someone complimented him, he said, "Thank you," without attachment. When someone criticized him, he listened without absorption. Elijah was no longer chasing energy. He was cultivating it. 2.8. The New Circle. 3 months into this journey, Elijah met a group of like-minded individuals at a local mindfulness workshop. Writers, creatives, entrepreneurs, deep thinkers. They didn't care about status. They cared about truth, integrity, growth. Elijah spoke little, but when he did, people listened. His silence had turned into presence. His detachment had made him magnetic. One woman in the group, Alina, said, "You speak like someone who's seen storms and decided not to fight them, but to become the sky." That night, Elijah wrote in his journal, "The less I try to explain myself, the more I become understood." 2.9. Silence. Detachment. Power. One day, while meditating, Elijah had a deep realization. He was no longer trying to control his environment. He was becoming the environment. He didn't need people to like him. He didn't need the job to define him. He didn't need revenge, recognition, or reassurance. All he needed was clarity. And clarity came when he let go, again and again. 2.10. Chapter. Close. The mountain within. Elijah wasn't at the top of a physical mountain, but he felt like one. Still, strong, silent, immovable. He had detached not from life, but from the illusions that once enslaved him. The need to always respond, the compulsion to explain, the addiction to attention. He had learned the sacred truth. When you stop chasing what doesn't matter, what matters begins to chase you. In the mirror, he now saw a man who didn't need noise to feel alive. He had mastered his emotions, and in doing so, he had finally begun mastering his life. You don't chase the flow, you become it. 3.1. Elijah's New Normal. 6 months had passed since Elijah began his inward journey. He had left behind the chaos of overthinking, social pressure, and emotional dependence. In its place grew discipline, peace, and silence. But something even deeper was happening now, something unexplainable. His life no longer felt like something he was trying to fix. It felt like something that was naturally unfolding. Doors were opening. People were showing up. Ideas were flowing. He wasn't forcing things anymore. They were flowing to him. It was as if by stepping back, he had allowed life itself to step forward. 3.2. The job that came to him. Elijah hadn't been applying to jobs. He was consulting a few small clients part-time and living simply. Then one morning, an old acquaintance from his past messaged him on LinkedIn. "Hey Elijah, I came across your old project notes. Are you still open to collaboration? We're launching something and your input could be gold." A week later, Elijah found himself in a meeting with 3 executives, pitching ideas that effortlessly poured out of him. He wasn't trying to impress. He was speaking from the silence he had cultivated. They offered him a role, creative director with full autonomy. He didn't chase it. He didn't beg for it. He attracted it by aligning with his higher self. 3.3. Relationships that align, not drain. Elijah's transformation didn't just attract professional opportunities. It attracted the right people. At a meditation retreat, he ran into Alina again, the same woman who had once told him, "You've seen storms, but became the sky." Their connection deepened, not out of need, but from presence. They didn't fill each other's voids. They mirrored each other's wholeness. Every conversation was deep. Every silence was sacred. There was no game, no rush, no projection, only truth. Elijah wrote in his journal that night, "This is what a connection feels like when you're not trying to escape yourself. It's not intensity, it's peace." 3.4. The shift from control to trust. In his old life, Elijah had tried to control everything, his schedule, people's opinions, even outcomes. But now he had adopted a different posture, surrender with awareness. He didn't mean surrender as in giving up, he meant allowing. Do the work, then trust the flow. He realized, you can't control who likes you. You can't control who stays. You can't force what's not aligned, but you can control your energy, your intentions, your daily rituals. And when those are pure, life meets you halfway. 3.5. The daily rhythm of flow. Elijah had created a personal ritual, a rhythm that kept him anchored in flow. Morning silence, no phone, just breath, journaling, and intention setting. Focused work. 3 to 4 hours of deep, intentional work. No multitasking. Movement. Daily walks, weight training, yoga once a week. Connection. Only calls and texts that uplift. No energy leaks. Evening reflection. Meditation, gratitude journaling, and surrender. He no longer lived by the clock. He lived by energy. And energy doesn't lie. It tells you what's real, what's heavy, what's right. 3.6. Living without resistance. Elijah was now living from a place of non-resistance. If things worked out, great. If not, still great. One afternoon, a major client backed out from a deal. In the past, he would have panicked. But now, he smiled and whispered to himself, "If it's not for me, it's making space for what is." 2 days later, a new client, who aligned more deeply with his purpose, offered double the rate for less work. It wasn't luck, it was flow. When you no longer cling to outcomes, better ones emerge. 3.7. The inner knowing. There's a state beyond thinking, beyond reacting. It's called knowing. Elijah had entered this space. He no longer second-guessed himself. If something felt wrong in his gut, he walked away. If it felt light, he leaned in. He didn't need 10 opinions. He didn't need signs. His inner compass was sharp, clean, and quiet. This intuition didn't scream, it whispered. And because his mind was silent, he could finally hear it. 3.8. The magnetic aura. One day, a stranger approached him in a bookstore. "Sorry to interrupt, you have this calm vibe about you. Are you a coach or something? Elijah laughed gently. Not at all, just focused on staying present. The stranger replied, Whatever you're doing, it's working. This began to happen more often. People felt his energy before he said a word. That's the power of focused silence. It becomes your aura. Elijah wasn't speaking louder, but the world was listening more. 3.9. What falls away. As his life aligned, he noticed certain things continued to fall away. Old friends who thrived on gossip, habits of overthinking and over-explaining, the desire to prove himself. At first it felt like loss, now it felt like freedom. He realized, silence doesn't just help you hear yourself, it removes everything that isn't your truth. And truth, when lived boldly, attracts everything meant for you. 3.10. Teaching without preaching. People began coming to him, not because he was shouting wisdom, but because he embodied it. His little cousin asked, How do you stay so calm even when life hits? He replied, I don't avoid the storm, I prepare my house. When friends asked for advice, he didn't give them long speeches. He told stories, shared reflections, asked questions. He had become a mirror, not a megaphone. 3.11. Full circle, a visit to his past. One evening, Elijah visited his old office building, the one he had left months ago. He sat at the cafe across the street sipping tea. People rushed in and out, phones glued to ears, eyes full of stress. He remembered that version of himself, always reacting, always exhausted. Now he just observed, with gratitude, not superiority, just awareness. He whispered to himself, I had to lose myself in noise to find myself in silence. 3.12. Legacy, not just life. Elijah knew his journey wasn't just for himself. It was for others too, those still caught in the noise, the lost, the overthinkers, the anxious. He began writing, a blog, a book, sharing his story, not to be famous, but to offer a blueprint for those seeking peace. His title? When you focus on yourself and stay silent, everything falls into place. It wasn't a slogan, it was a revelation. 3.13. Final reflection. Elijah once thought success meant being loud, visible, constantly achieving. But now he knew better. Success was waking up with peace, creating without pressure, loving without clinging, letting go without pain, trusting life without fear. He had gone from chaos to clarity, from noise to knowing.